Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have good news and bad news. The bad news are almost everything related to the airport and airport processes has been covered today. So we are going to have a problem. We have to invent something new, introduce new ideas, and satisfy our listeners. And the good news is it's the last session. After that, you are released. The title of this forum is Global Airport Leaders Forum. I'm not a global airport and not an airport leader, but I'm coming from the industry. This is a totally different approach. Why are we here? Why I'm here? The association I represent, I would like to show you this little picture here, GATE. These are our members here on the board. If you show the next one, please. We are an association with about 40 German companies in the technology, in the airport technology. And our question is also, are we as a technology provider the real game changer and a growth generator? Is that so? I think we have the technology, but the airport leaders, they have to guide us. They have to guide us to implement this technology. So I told you already who we are. So I give you I go a little bit to the background of this. We are, please change it, it's more than 30 years in this industry. And we are here in the, right, thank you for the next, thank you. And we always provided the right equipment at the right time at any period of time. And when you read this little sign on the right-hand side, Middle East Airports 81, this was the first airport show here in Dubai. And when you go out and see the airport show today, how the technology changed, you see how long we already guide this technology here in the Middle East. You can also visit our pavilion out there, the German pavilion, but this time tomorrow. I like this image, which is the development of the innovation and transportation. When you look at ground transport exists since hundreds and thousands of years. Water transport as well. And in this long period of time, the development has been not as fast as it was in the aviation industry. The aviation industry had a very short period of time to develop everything. It might have happened that we did some mistakes. And then, when you look then at Dubai, in Dubai, it was even more accelerated than somewhere else. This is what we learned today. And when we heard about the future of this airport, it is actually confirmed. There's another little image, airport versus aircraft technology. I mean, this is pretty easy to say. The aircraft technology remained the same from the 747 to the Dreamliner A380. It's still transporting passengers, that's it. And then you look at the airport technology, it started at zero. And sometime it crossed, perhaps, the aircraft technology, because we have such a tremendous, sophisticated technology now in the airport industry that it's almost as close as it is in the aircraft itself. So, airport customer experience, I say customer experience, not passenger experience, this is the issue of these days. We used to say passenger handling. I believe passenger handling is the wrong word. We have to treat the passengers. All that we heard, how we can do that. We have to convert the passenger into a dedicated customer. This is a nice sentence: create a worldwide desire to experience the opportunities of your airport, make it a brand. it means, and we heard it from Munich earlier, it is also for Dubai. It's not only the airport, it's the environment. We have to create an environment not only at the airport, in the surrounding, the transportation, in the entire environment to make an airport successful. So the reason to make the airport successful is, or to make an airport successful, is to provide a stress-free airport. But I think a stress-free airport is a vision. We never can make an airport really stress-free. All the travelers are only stress-free when they are sitting in the aircraft and it's going to start. The time between we have to make as easy as possible for them all the way. So let's discuss. What drives airport technology? What drives airport growth? Is it the technology? Is it the passenger? Is it the airline or the competition? Is it the image? And what do airports, airlines, and passengers expect from us, from our technology? So let me start with the last question on this agenda we have here, or one of the questions which is on the agenda: future trends in technology and its impact on the aviation industry. And I would like to ask Joseph first to give us an indication of what that means for you.
Right, you know, I'm coming from the airline side of things,
This is why I asked you.
Yeah, I may have a particular view on technology. Maybe I would just start with the kind of the underlying paradigm here. You know, when you approach air travel from the perspective of the customer, I mean, they do travel not for flying an airline or enjoying an airport, but for, you know, some other purposes. They have a business somewhere, they go for leisure, they want to be together with friends or relatives or families, etc. But they need to get it over with, you know, processes at airports, and they need to get it over with airlines. So within that context, I think technology is important to create efficiency, to create as much as possible a hassle-free environment for the passengers. I think we also need to recognize that air travel is becoming a commodity. So cost consciousness and efficiency from that perspective is also very important. So my view is that you know, technology should be deployed against serving efficiencies, a lower cost environment, an easier travel experience for people. I don't think people are really keen on experiencing, you know, palaces of airports or, you know, huge investments in airlines. I mean, some people will do, but recognizing that this is becoming a mass production more and more, I think we need to take into account these issues. The other element I would mention is the development of consumer interface technology. Just think about it like if you take 70 or 80 years of the aviation industry, you know, kind of the first 50, 60 years, people were interacting through tour operators or airline offices. So, you know, the interaction was very location-driven, very physical. Over the past 10, 15 years, it was more and more internet-based. So no physical touch was required. Basically, airlines, airports, and people, passengers were interacting through the internet. Nowadays, everyone is with a mobile phone, which is going to create another spin on technology, another spin on communications between various business entities and the passengers. So all those taken into account, I think technology should serve efficiency, should serve a lower cost environment, and should serve a hassle-free experience for people, travelers.
So you are more favoring not less technology, but less sophisticated technology. Is this what I can read out of your comment?
I don't know whether this is a value statement of sophistication. I mean, it can be a very sophisticated technology, but I think it should serve a purpose. And I don't think the purpose should be just enhancing the experience, because that's not the primary purpose of travelers. I think the primary objective should be, you know, to serve efficiency, and easiness of travel for people, because they are traveling for something else, not because of the sake of travel.
Not because of shopping and...
not because of shopping. It's a nice addition, but that's not their main purpose.
This is correct. When you look back at the periods of this airport development, I like to divide it into ages. We once had the Stone Age, where we only provided the buildings and the apron. And after that, we had the, let's say, the digital age or the security age. Then I remember that everybody discussed only non-aviation revenues. And then for some period of time, we only discussed, after 9/11, security. And finally now, we end up with discussing passenger convenience. So the question is, what kind of convenience we present to the passenger to have growth in airports? Perhaps Robert can talk to that, but you are more visionary into the future of that.
No, partially, and maybe to explain, other than working for Emirates and being involved in the IT, for the passengers, I'm actually involved actively in the IATA Simplify the Business program, which defines more or less how passengers and how streamlining should be around 2020 onwards. And taking that in line, I think you need to have the right technology for the right passengers. It means as an airline, as Emirates, we have a mixture between frequent flyers, which are probably most of the people in this room, as well as we got labor traffic, who go from A to B in an airport with 3 concourses, which is not the easiest to get along from one flight to the other. And it's a question if we need to get the right technology to the right person to actually help the customer process to be working for them. And there's not a one-size-fits-all. You literally need to adopt yourself to start saying, for this customer target, a high sophisticated travelers, you empower them and you let them do everything. For others, you need to give them as much information to get them through an unknown entity called an airport terminal. And we have a lot of passengers who have never flown in their life before. Who take up their first job in Saudi Arabia or somewhere else. And you just have to guide them through, because we still have to get them from 1 hour from one airplane to the other, and they can be 2 kilometers apart. So it's the kind of things you use the best technology to help each segment of your customers to make their life as easy as possible.
You refer more to the IT technology,
yes,
digital
correct.
technology.
Correct. And that includes, but we try to extend it, including of our onboards. If you onboarded the Emirates planes, you see already we tell you which connecting gates. So we already give you information, which your baggage belt, where your baggage is arriving. So we try as much as possible to integrate the ground into the air and soon into people's personal mobile, where we get active information which is relevant for you on your travel, not necessarily generic stuff. You arrive on this gate, you need to go to that gate. This is how you get there in your language, because not everybody speaks English or Arabic. We have to be, our customers are from all over the world, so we need to be much more specifically targeting to those groups in their specific circumstances to help them to make it seamless.
When we go down to the technical, to the more mechanical part of it, this is perhaps you can deliver an answer to that. I mean, all this IT thing are underneath mechanical also.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with Rob. What he said is, and it comes back to your initial slide where you requested what drives the technology, what drives the development. At the end of the day, I think it is a mixture of the passengers, the airline, and obviously the competition. If we look into understanding the passengers and the different passengers' needs, that will definitely drive technology implementation in different directions and the combination of different technologies in one particular location. On the other hand, looking not only as the passenger as a customer, but looking at the airlines themselves as customers, they drive technology because they have business intelligence greater than what we as suppliers have, because they are closer to the passenger's experience as such and the feedback of the passenger. And of course, if you look into the earlier sessions of today, we've had airport operations as a topic and how to make them more cost effective. So if we look into what drives cost efficiency, it's certainly operational expenditure and capital expenditure as a combination. And that's where the competition between individual suppliers will drive technology, will drive your capital expenditure costs as well as your operational expenditure. So I think it's quite a good mixture of measures you can apply in order to move and excel from the level where we are right now?
So the implementation of this mechanical process, which are always on higher speed, when you see the displays out there, I mean, this is a technology which was not available 10, 15 years ago. And the demand is still to get faster, to get better, to combine these huge distances for baggage handling, for cargo handling. I can't see an end on that. Can we achieve it still mechanically, or can we achieve it, can we follow the IT?
I think there's limits of the physics, which we currently experience. However, IT drives, and as you said, there's the desire for speed, and there's desire for comfort, and the desire for experience. And it's, again, I think, is the mix. You need to achieve the right mix. I don't have every passenger in this airport traveling at that same speed. I have people who have 3 hours dwell time, 5 hours dwell time, and I have people who have to move within 30 minutes from A to B. And I need to have the right mix of technology and the right mix of mechanical as well as IT applications in order to achieve the best fit for that particular need. And that is, I think, where the future lays. We can over-engineer and over-design, which will dramatically increase capital expenditure, and you will not recover it through your operational revenue. Or you go into a smart development where you see, I define my system requirements by the eventual output which I require through the passenger analysis and the airline's analysis, which comes back to, I think we heard the topic earlier on of data mining and big data analysis and the collaboration between the different stakeholders. And I think that's where the key in the future lies, that you have partnerships rather than individual verticals. You operate more in a partnership approach and you invest in this partnership mutually.
How do you look at that, Wissam? You're coming more from the passenger side, should I say so?
Sure. I'm coming from actually the service provider side, like to the airports. We have to look to the complete chain here, starting from the real needs behind this growth and whether we need the technologies to be implemented at that stage or not. What's the real factor to push us to try to invest more in trying to simplify the transportation? My belief, the main reason for that is the need to interlink the world in a faster way. Currently, we are all saying that the globe is a small village and we need all to communicate together to transfer from an area to area in a fast way. This should be the main reason and the thing that we need to focus on, how to get the passenger in the fastest and the safest method. In the same time, the experience of the traveler, we would like to avoid the statement that you mentioned at the beginning, that the experience during the 2 hours that the passengers are spending in the airport is a stressful experience that we would like to avoid, and the passenger is only thinking about sitting on the plane, and we will try to avoid that by transferring the experience to a different method. Technologies can help us to do this by giving all the stakeholders what they need. The airport at end would like to get maybe more revenue, smoother operation, maybe good representation for the country. The airlines, maybe the gentleman can also add to that. They are looking again for more revenue and to smoothen their own operation, as well as to differentiate from the others, from the competition. Looking to the passenger, simply would like to invest more during his travel. He would like to travel more, pay less. He'd like to get fastest way how to, to bypass all the things blocking him from reaching his destinations. We can add a lot of things to the passenger's experience using technology that will help him to, rather than we push him to be in the airport 2 hours before the flight, that they by themselves came 3 hours to the airport and try to enjoy some of the facilities which is there. I can look to Dubai airports here as a great achievement, because I know many people who normally go to the airport like more than 2 hours before, because they have a lot of things to do, especially in the shopping area. In addition to all of this, if we simplify the transfer of the passenger from the moment he arrives to the airport up to the plane, he will have more time, or he or she will have more time to spend shopping, which will return on revenue for the airports, as well as by deploying the right technologies, the airlines themselves will be able to fly more, reduce their cost, and gain more revenue out of that.
So is technology the driver or the passenger?
The passenger should be the driver.
The passenger should be the driver.
Everything what we do should be there to help the customer. And of course it helps to reduce our cost as well. But I think the key is, if you look for instance at our departure process, if you go from A to B, and I've been speaking there at some conferences, you show your passport 7 times and your boarding pass 8 times. To my idea, it's complete madness. Because why? Every time when you enter the next entity, you're completely a stranger and they don't know what you did in your previous step. So as a result, is you keep on repeating and repeating and repeating the same stuff without any value add. Well, if collaboration is, for instance, we talk about the smart gates which are here in Dubai, but it's, again, we could potentially eliminate swiping your passport at check-in if the smart gate would actually tell us as an airline, this passenger's just gone through. Right now, you go on online check-in, you put in all your passport details, except we can't verify it because your government doesn't tell you whether that's correct. So we get fined as an airline if the data is wrong. So we re-swipe you at check-in, waste of space. And then you get to the next point where we take your passport. So why can't we integrate it? So it's a kind of, as an airline, we quite often have to give a lot of data to the authorities, but we actually take the next step is get data back to help the customer process. And we can take a few minutes out of the entire process, and that's more dwell time and more pleasant from a customer. And I think technology, biometrics, a lot of these things are there now available, which can make the entire process a lot easier, which the customer is benefiting of it. And as airlines and as airports, you need less space for check-in, you need more space for retailing, which is good for everybody.
So how do you see the airport in the next 10 years? And a question to that is, can you also implement this vision into the new airport you are going to build?
Now, we are currently talking about the design of the new airport down there, and if you just expand what we do today, and you multiply it by the fact that ultimately it's about 4 times as big as what we do today, or I don't know how many times, it becomes madness. I need 1,000 check-in desks, I need 100,000 people with an airport pass. It just becomes complete madness in the numbers, how you actually have to handle it. You need 4-lane highways within the airport to be able to get all your ground stuff from A to B. So I don't think the current processes of how we work today is actually sustainable into the future. Check-in, as we know it today, is no longer required there. It was done when the passenger had the ticket in his hand. You didn't know when he was showing up. Tickets are on our computers these days. So we know everything about the passenger. We know a lot more. And if you can collaborate between the airport and the airline and share the information, you can do most processes off airport. If you can then sort out the baggage, then effectively you don't need a huge check-in environment anymore on the airport. Take biometrics and you just flow through and the doors open up for you. Instead of right now, every time you get into the next step and you're being asked the same questions and the same information. But it's a challenge. It's not there, but luckily enough, the advantage we have to the airport is not going to be open tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
But some of the key decisions about fundamental infrastructure are being made now, and those things are being taken into consideration. So.
Yeah. Do you think you can take the frustrations away of those people in my age which travel only once or twice a year, and they are very much afraid of the airport? Mm-hmm. They don't know how it works with the drop-in luggage. They don't know how it works with key cards and all this electronics, and so they avoid flying.
Now, okay, maybe Emirates is slightly different compared to other carriers. Means our apology is that it's the choice of the customer. So if you feel like you want to go to a human being to be handled, be free and go to a desk, we will handle you.
Okay.
We don't force you to go to a kiosk or to go to an automated machine. Yeah. That's a clear choice of the airline. It's your choice, although we will probably encourage. And yeah, but if you feel more comfortable going to a human being, go there. My son, who is 23, he prefers to stay away from human beings. He likes everything automated. He likes to do everything on the mobile. So it's a kind of every generation has different requirements.
So yeah, but you have to tell the customer that he still meets somebody to look in his eyes and ask him, what can I help you? Can I put your luggage on the scale? And if not, these people don't want to travel anymore. No. Joseph, what is your opinion? You have a different opinion on that.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm, kind of the black hole in this room here. I mean, I'm approaching all these matters from a slightly different perspective. I think I agree with the basic assumption that customer needs should drive technological development and certain processes. Nevertheless, I mean, we all know that people want to have the best service possible for themselves. There's a genuine desire of human beings that they want to access the best. But you need to put that into a value perspective, and you need to understand whether people are prepared to pay for it or not. I mean, yes, I mean, I'd like to drive the best car ever produced, but I might not be in a position to actually pay for that car. And I think one of the problems with airport development is that only one side of the equation is looked at, and not necessarily the entire picture. And lots of investments are going into airports, and the end result is not necessarily meeting the desired outcome, and may not result in increased traffic, or may not result in the full potential of aviation. I mean, Wizz Air is a fairly fresh airline coming to the Dubai market, and we looked at two airports here in Dubai Main Airport, International Airport, and Dubai World Center, and we ended up with Dubai World Center. And it's because of two very distinct issues. One is that we're seeing that from a low-cost airline perspective, a DWC is a better operating environment. It's more efficient, it's less congested, it's quicker, it's faster, it requires less ground time than operating from Dubai International. Secondly, it is a lower cost environment, genuinely, and I appreciate that various airlines look after various customer groups, and they have different needs. But when I look at it from a low-cost airline perspective, when we ask people about their preferences, on what basis they choose an airline, like 80% of people say that the sole reason why they choose an airline is pricing, is the value proposition.
Is what the main?
80% the reason why they are choosing an airline is money, is price. And when you ask questions like, okay, how about airport choice, how about network design, how about frequencies of the flights, etc., it's all very, very small bits of pieces, a couple of percentage points. So this is why we have an overwhelming desire to see technological developments in airports going for promoting efficiency, lowering costs. So we think when there is an investment into the airport, if it drives costs down, that's a great investment. If it drives costs up, that's not necessarily a great investment.
Can you imagine that passenger selects his flight with a stopover by the airport and not by the airline? What I mean is, when I fly from Europe to the Far East, I have so many opportunities to fly to in a stopover flight if I don't want to take Lufthansa's high prices. So I can start thinking, go either to Dubai, go to Turkey, Abu Dhabi, or that could be an airport designed in a way that the passenger wants to go to. This particular airport, no matter what the airline is?
It's a good question. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think people really care about the airline, or they really care about the airport. I think they care about the value proposition, what they are getting. As I said at the beginning, the primary purpose of travel is not the sake of travel. It's to do something else, and you need to go through the travel experience. And I think we all try very hard to create a great experience and to get it better than others. But at the end of the day, I think the value proposition has to be right to the people. And I think they are fairly flexible to choose airlines or choose airports alongside the value proposition. So I think it's a value matter. I mean, obviously, value means different things. I'm not necessarily just talking about, the rock bottom prices. Certain people are compelled by prices, certain others are compelled by service. But I think the value proposition has to be put into a centric point of considerations.
So competition is the driver. Mm-hmm. Competition is the driver. We had one thing. Competition amongst airlines.
Yeah, but I think in fairness, down there, a strong bond between the home carrier and the airport is what drives it forward. We saw with Lufthansa Munich and you see with Emirates in Dubai. But at the end of the day, you can have the greatest airline product, but if your ground product of transfer is not right, people are not going to use that as a choice of transfer. It's different if you go point to point, which is probably more where colleague of Wizz Air is from.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, where you want to go from A to B, but if you want to go from A to C and you have 20 choices of where B is, yeah, then you need to have a good product to fly on, but you also need to, which is reliable and safe and all those things, but you also need a good product on the ground, which gives you a confidence that you actually have an enjoyable experience. And I think it's a partnership between the airlines and the airport which have to make that work.
Yeah, we have seen this morning that the growth is not in Europe and it's not in America. It's in the East and the Middle East. And when you then think of growth, then we are talking about long distance.
Yep.
Correct? So the growth comes with long distance. And in this long distance, non-stop or one-stop or two-stop flights, the airport, I think, plays a very major role. Where to go, what to select, what can you expect. So these airports have to provide something which is extraordinary to the passenger that he flies to this particular airport. What could it be? What do you think? Is it the technology or is it the environment? Or what is it?
It's a combination of environment. I think it's also a fact that airlines and airports need to share data. So if I walk off an airplane and I've got 3 hours of dwell time, why can't my device tell me, turn right, you get 25% discount at this coffee shop or whatever? But if I only have 40 minutes to connect, please don't give me any commercial information. As an airline, I don't want you to distract the passenger. I want to get them from A to B. So it's a combination of working together where you can actually make that experience as pleasant as possible. You end up having an 8-hour layover in Dubai in the middle of the night and we offer you a city tour at night. Why not? Things are possible. But it's a combination of we're working together, and that might require a visa, so you might have immigration involved, you might have different things, where you can make it a pleasant experience, and technology can be a driver of doing it. But I think it's the collaboration between the parties which is the key.
Then we come actually to this question, which is already here, the risks and the challenges for airports from extensive technology-driven operations. Do you see a risk in the technology?
Sure, if we are deploying technologies only for the purpose of deploying technologies, then we are playing the wrong game here. The focus should be on the needs, the real needs of all the stakeholders, starting with the main focus, which should be the passengers, moving to the airlines, to the airport itself, being the gate of the country. So the smart deployment of the technology is the major rule here, that we don't want to be over-technologized or whatever you want to call it, but what we need to do is to use the technology which is suitable for our own needs, not for the purpose of showing. Like even airports by itself are different. Domestic airport is so much different than international airport from the technologies that needs to be deployed over there. So look to the needs, study it, even spend more time in the planning, much better than going and deploying technology, then trying to validate why we deploy this technology.
So I want to continue with the risk. And Joseph, the risk, do you see all the risks in over-technology?
One of the risks is if technology stops, the entire airport probably stops.
Say it again, I didn't get it.
Is the risk if technology stops? I mean, sometimes we have seen in serious fog scenarios or other kind of things that the information which is displayable to the customers at the fit screens is different than what it is in our system is in the airline. Now that's not very nice because people are going to the wrong locations, etc. So the key part is that technology has to work and has to be solid there if people are going to be very reliant and dependent on it. So the risk from technology is failure. So you need to put a lot of focus on there that the quality of operation is perfect. Because otherwise you're going to discourage people and they're all going to run around and asking questions to staff who are just as clueless where the next plane is because the information is no longer there.
Okay.
I think technology is a risk and at the same time it's an opportunity. I think if you are an innovative business and you can engage with technological development and you are in the forefront of those developments, I mean, you can create a business opportunity for yourself. But if you are lagging behind as a result of not being moving forward with technological developments, then you're going to have an issue for your business. I mean, I'm really amazed just to see, I have three sons, and just look at them, and the time span in age is 8 years. between the oldest and the youngest. And you know, the oldest is still very kind of internet engaged. He spends a lot of time on internet, but the youngest spends all of his time on his mobile phone. I mean, you know, how do you address that? And I think the issue is that technology changes so quickly. It's not just a matter of substance of the technology, but a matter of speed of changes in technology and how do you engage with that. So I think it is an opportunity, definitely, if you can take advantage of it, but it's also a major business risk if you get lagging behind.
I would like to add also
please.
about the risks. If you deploy the wrong technology, then this is a risk because you are increasing your cost, which would affect the overall commercials of the airport. If you deploy wrong technology, people will have to pay for it even if they don't need it.
Sure. Maybe I want to add to the risk and chances topic on that one. Yes, definitely you will have a risk component by applying technology, the same way you have a risk component by not applying technology. And on the other side, technology gives you the chance to evolve from where you are right now and come to the point where you collaborate on the basis of that technology and simplify processes on the basis of that technology by removing the human interface and making it process-driven, which is a defined process. So it is really the right application in the right kind of context will provide you huge chances in your development in the future. So it is something you have to consider and you have to be very much aware of, that applying technology implies bringing a risk component to it, which you can very well deal with if you apply it in the right fashion, where you implement redundancies to that particular technology and don't make it too complex and overcomplicated. So the key to me is like applying technology which simplifies matters, if that makes sense to the panel.
Is a lost piece of luggage still a risk?
The other thing from a customer perspective is the risk of technology is that every airport and home airline together are coming with wonderful solutions. But as airlines and passengers, you fly from A to B, and you want to have a consistent customer experience. So that's the reason why things like standards coming in, and why it's so important that IATA, where I'm actively involved in, ACI and ICAO, which are the governments, are all working together of coming with a set of standards which allows that information exchange to happen, so you can start providing a worldwide consistent experience instead of the best experience at home, but oh God, we are now in this airport and we are clueless. And so the key is for Wizz Air to be able to provide the service in Dubai World Central. They want to try to provide the same what they can do back home. But right now, they're not. And that's why I think the airlines and the airports need to step up together and come up with a set of standards which allows information exchange to happen, so that everybody can start building applications and technology providers can start building applications, selling them to airlines or selling them to airports, because they're all based on the same common standards. And right now, those standards are quite often not there yet.
I have another question, which is not on that paper, but which is of interest to me. We are talking about the terminal and all what happened in the terminal, but at one point we have to deliver to the airline, the luggage and the passenger. How does this work? I remember that it was always a trouble. Even for the packages was a trouble. The package arrived to the system at a certain point, but from here to the aircraft, the ground handling created some trouble. Is it no trouble anymore? Is it perfectly organized? Are all these ground handling things on the apron so good that you could rely on it?
I think out of experience here with our operations, where we work very close together with the ground handlers, we see that over the years there's been tremendous efforts been made and improvements been done to the operations. Obviously, with increasing traffic, the conventional way of ground handling poses new challenges. Congestions on the roadways rather than into the systems, which then or implicate back onto the systems. And that's what needs to be dealt with. But in general, you mentioned, is the lost bag still a problem? I think every single piece of luggage which is lost or unaccounted for at a certain point in time still poses a problem, either to an individual or commercially then to an operator or an airline. However, the number especially I think here in the operations in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which we can talk about, is drastically below market average. The performance has been significantly improved, and technology provides for that the missing link, which has previously been there, can be closed, and it will be that seamless experience what everyone talks about. And the bag may have gone into a direction which it wasn't destined to, but it's not lost. It's not unaccounted for as it may have been in the past, because information's been shared across the boundaries, and information's been relayed from one party forward to the other and back, so that you can inform also the passenger and where the bag has gone, when will it come back, and it creates that level of certainty back and assurance to the customer, which I think increases the customer experience dramatically.
It's again a software thing, right?
A bit like the airlines have been working very closely together with the airports, and I think the IATA Simplify the Business baggage improvement program, which has been running for a number of years, I think reduced the baggage loss rate by, I think, more than 50%.
Okay.
Now, still not good, because 50% is still being lost of the original percentage, but it's half the number of bags per million passengers which you lose is an enormous improvement. But a lot of them are infrastructural elements, not technology. I mean, as I say, it's a roadway, a baggage truck has to pass a taxiway. If there happens a lot of airplanes passing by, they have priority. Yeah? So as a result, a bag might get stuck there on the taxiway for 15, 20 minutes. What do? There's not much you can do about it. So there is a lot of airport physics in there which you can't solve with technology, other than the traceability to tell the passenger your bag is not on board. Yes, that you can do.
Yes, Joseph, you have.
Maybe just to add to this, I mean, obviously the airports are much better placed to make comments on this, but from an airline perspective, it seems to me that ramp handling has been mastered over the years. It's a fairly routine process. Not a lot of innovations has been going on there. I think all the innovation and technology, have been impacting on the passenger side of things, the passenger handling, and that's why all issues around inconsistencies, etc., are coming up. But as far as we are concerned, we feel fairly comfortable with the behind the scenes processes. Okay. We never had big issues, with those. Well, rarely, but not really. But when it comes to passenger handling and the level of inconsistency, the level of innovation, the impact of technology, requiring us to change processes and implementing new technologies can create distress in the process. So from an airline perspective, we are far more focused on the passenger handling side of the equation as opposed to ramp handling, which is a fairly routine and fairly mechanical process.
Okay. Yeah, I remember times when certain airports had to be avoided because of lost luggage. I mean, these times are obviously over, for God's sake. Okay, fine. Lessons from inspiring global success stories. How can we interpret that into technology? Have these very successful airports and success stories, what do they have to do with the technology? Is it only technology, or is it the acceptance by the passenger? Is it perhaps even the strange word marketing in this field? What makes the future, or what could we adapt from so successful airports? I realized we mentioned this morning as attractive airports, Singapore, Dubai, Hong Kong, and I miss European airports. What can European airports do to become comparable to this successful big airports? Or are they already so successful? What is the point? I mean, we have that problem. When I enter Frankfurt, it's not easy to find my way, even if I travel quite a lot. But to enter here, it's much easier, it's faster. What can these people in Europe learn from these processes here? Are you ahead of them?
I think the technology providers behind the scenes are of a similar kind of setup. And I mean, ourselves, we've been working in Europe, in America, in Asia. So I don't think it is the the technology behind which you differ very much from. I think if we've been listening this morning to the forum, there's a lot of vision in the Asian market and in the Middle East market, which perhaps the European market can learn from and can look into looking what obstacles of development do we have in Europe and how they've been removed in other parts of the world, and how do we adapt and drive that in a different way here in the region than in Europe. Perhaps that is the key. I'm just guessing and looking into my own personal experience.
Yeah, the question is, how will the future airport in 10 or 15 years look like? What I learned from you is that there are different opinions. What statement would you give to a future airport? What should it look like?
Actually, it's not the size that will differentiate the future airports, but it's the flexibility, it's the smooth operation, it's the fastest way how we can get the passenger to the place where we want him to be in, which is the duty free, and then to the on board. This is the how simple we can do this, how we can simplify his journey, because the other factors which is forcing him to come like 2-3 hours before, or to stand on long queues, or to do all these things which makes this experience not a pleasant one, we can avoid it all by the right deployment of technology in all these aspects. So technology can help to simplify. It's not about going big in regards to the size of the airport, as the gentleman said. It is adding to the complexity. No, we should think smart about how maybe even to make the size smaller, more convenient, and faster for the passengers to reach.
Is this your opinion also from the airline point of view?
No, I think Europe is struggling with a lot of legacy, and when you look at new generation businesses, airlines or airports, I mean, they tend to do better than the older generations. So I think that is a process advantage for those developments. From a low-cost airline perspective, we kind of like the very simple airport solutions. We tend to fly to point-to-point airports as opposed to hub airports, just for operational and cost reasons. I think there are some good developments all over the world, actually, from that perspective. I mean, one of the things that I think has revolutionized air travel over the past decade is the opening of new airports, smaller airports, regional airports, secondary airports. They've created a lot of dynamics globally. I mean, it's not only Europe, but it's also here in the Middle East or Asia, in the United States, basically everywhere. But coming back to your question, I think one of the problems of Europe is the legacy what they carry.
Okay.
I think a lot of them is also, by the way, not necessarily driven by technology, but by fixed people and processes. Means once I departed out of an airport in Europe, and I'm not going to mention which one, and it was a bit of bad weather. And suddenly at 9 o'clock, the security queues went up. And what was the answer? According to all the security people, 50% went home because the evening shift was going to be quiet for the rest of the time. Now, if something like that would happen here, sorry, go on overtime, you work, we'll pay you overtime to deal with it. But that was 9 o'clock, I'm home. Yeah? So as a result, I don't think anymore about the customer, my shift is over. The fact that the normal process of passenger flow was completely disrupted was not taken into consideration. And actually somebody came to the idea, we need a few more security people for an hour. Yeah? It's just, I'm gone. That's it.
Okay, Michael, and from the technical point, from your point of view as a manufacturer of that systems, how do you see new systems, new development in 10 years from now? Is there anything new, really new coming, or is it?
If we talk about the hardware components, certainly there will be developments which go towards simplified operation and maintenance, I suppose, where there's still a lot of untapped potential in the future, where we can, if we look at the long-term project of 20 years of operation, 25 years of operation, we can invest in simplified operational procedures, maintainability, which will drive cost, eventually drive technology on the hardware side. But I think what we will be seeing in the global system side is that the smarter applications will take over, and it is not so much about what hardware do I deploy, it's how I operate it and how I interact with my other stakeholders which have interfaces to that system. We're talking about, especially now in baggage handling systems, we're talking about the ground handling. How do we process towards the ground handler? How do we process towards the passengers? How do we process from the passenger? And that again is very much dependent on, do we understand how they operate and do we understand how they evolve? It's the passenger of today will not be the same passenger in 10 years.
That would be my last question. But do we discuss this already now with the airlines? I think you are in research and development or this thing. Do you discuss this already with the airlines and airports?
Yes,
there is the vision of the future.
There is definitely these discussions going on in between the industry themselves, but also with the end customers, with the airlines. And obviously you listen to what passengers got to say when you walk through an airport and you realize that there's an issue which has caused disturbance. You pick that up and you take it back to your think tank and you think, how is that avoidable in the future? So definitely that process has started, and developments like we see here with Al Maktoum International require that thought process to be intensified and to be rolled out. I mean, there's a lot which has been asked of the industry, the airlines, the airport operators for this particular development, because it is something which is not being done yet in that magnitude, in that scale. It's a long-term development, and whatever we implement today needs to be future ready, and I think that is the key. We can't close out from the future. We need to be modular in a sense that whatever develops in the next 10, 15, 20 years is something which is an add-on rather than a replacement.
So you said that the passenger will look different in 10 years. It will be a smart passenger, right?
Some of them, but at the end of the day, you and me will still be flying around.
It will be a smart passenger.
So from that perspective, I think it's a variety of passengers. But I think the difference is the customer is going to be more empowered. So you need to be able to say, the information flow, these days the customer has a lot more information. And by the way, if he doesn't like it, before the plane is taken off, it's already on Facebook. Yep. So it's the kind of, the technology is there, so you just have to be faster in responding with it. But I don't think it's getting a new technology and finding a problem to fix. We need to look at the underlying processes, how we handle the passenger, which haven't massively changed over the last 30 years. And actually probably due for a revamp. And that's the work we're doing in the Simplify the Business think tank on IATA level with airlines and technology providers. And ACI is working on, and we're collaboratively trying to put it together such what can we actually make the future passenger process look like. Then the technology is the enabler to make it work. But initially you need to start saying the processes itself are probably a little broken.
So the smart passenger of the future looks different from the smart passenger in the past. You know how he looked like the smart passenger in the past? He was about in the early 30s, a good sportsman with a golden credit card, traveling alone, no luggage, no family, and being really fast. And with an IQ of 120. This is how the airports were built 10, 15, 20, 60 years ago. Who could travel with the car? Nobody cared. I mean, I worked for an airport sometime. Nobody cared about a family traveling with kids. Nobody cared about them. Nobody cared about elderly people. So I hope this will change in the future and these people can adapt this new technology being smart enough, not over smart.
It has to be made easy for them, in effect, and that's what you have to strive for. I think is that you have these different groups of passengers which you want to engage with, and you need to make them happy to engage with you and to share what moves them. And I think that is the key to it. As soon as we understand the individual needs of the passengers, we will be able to cater for them. And that is the fact of communication with them, sharing, which is also a fact of data security, which always comes into play. Is how much do I want to be opening up to the public, to the service providers? And that's what, at the end of the day, will be key to it. And there's definitely a shift in how we look into information security as individuals.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I stand here is one question which is actually not a question anymore. The question is how investments in technology will pay off for airports in the long term. I think there's nobody amongst yourself that say investments will not create a better airport and better technology. So I don't want to stress this session too long. It's the last session, but I'd like to go to the public, to the audience, to ask some good questions. And here we have the first.
Thank you. Ibrahim Kayat, International Center for Strategic Analysis. I think the last question is taking a strategic angle. Probably Mr. Schneider was the one who was focusing on this, also answering a few of the questions regarding this one. What we are seeing when we talk technology, technology is going towards, the name of the game is integration. Integration between the passenger himself who is using smartphones, like Mr. Broer has said. People are getting the flow of information, the flow of goods, the flow of capitals. The technology is making it happening faster. And this is not happening only as the airport is becoming the only interface for this. It's an interface between passenger, authorities, and the managers of the facilities. If we say traveling is going from point A to point B, point to point, the point at the end is an airport, A or B. And the airport itself, the point, is made of different systems and processes. There are two things here. One is the availability of the technology. When we talk technology, is availability. So now what we are talking about, the new technology in 5-10 years time, like you asked, 10 years time, long term, it is going to become the standards. So we're talking about new standards in airport services. The thing is, when we have technology, the availability is going to become, especially in areas where, or countries or regions where we have economy scale, it will become cheaper. And then the second thing is, there is endorsement. The endorsement authorities, because of the technology itself, it's going to change the boundaries between authorities and stakeholders within the airport itself. We are not going to see the same thing happening in the future. It will be a systematic, automated system where management and everything will be happening in an automatic way. So we are not talking about the same landscape as we see it today for services, where stakeholders are different, trying to work together and to try to bring a better service to the customers. So endorsement is going to change. Availability will change it will change the whole game in the future, and it will become the standards. So we are talking about new standards that will force the industry towards changing. And last thing also is with regard to airports or legacy airports, if we can say, in the countries where better capital, better risk management, we call mature markets, where we had the possibility to find a better growth in the past. Now this is shifting to Asia. No matter what, it's finished. So and if you want to grow, you have your own inner limitations. The airports are limited because of the vicinity to cities in a lot of mature markets. So they have a problem on how to grow, on how to manage growth. Also, they have the legal framework. They are taken for granted. We can impose taxes. I don't want to tell so many issues I've seen in Europe in the last 2 decades about how to manage the airspace, how to allow airlines to travel because of the red tape. The red tape is still there, while here, one of the problems, I just give you a small example about Dubai. Dubai is a desertic area. How can they manage to convince people? Tens of billions, hundreds of billions of FDIs to come over to this part of the world and to people to come over because they believed in their growth. In the legacy or mature markets, people manage what they have. They don't believe. This is running business. So there is another mentality. Technology, this is an issue where it is going to change the standards but not change the beliefs. And last thing is, when we talk about investment, technology is also an investment thing. The ROI, return on investment. Who is going to finance this? In countries where we believe, yes. In countries where we manage, go to the red tape. This will be always an obstacle. The industry, because there is a competitive edge, will be looking forward. Some parliamentary committees here or there will be asking for changes. Probably we will sack some CEOs here and there, and then people will come and make some changes, or we can go to the private sector. But the technology, it needs capital, it needs belief, it needs endorsement, and it by itself, it will change the whole game and the whole landscape.
I consider this a statement rather than a question. Or do you have a particular...
It was just to comment, to add to what the discussion that is.
Excellent. Actually, we could close this with this statement if there's not anything else. So I thank you very much for attending the last session. And I think we could close it. The audience is already on the beach. Why should we go? So, thanks a lot.